It went up again.
Okay, forget it.
Okay.
Let them know it. If you don't know, just ask somebody. So that's equal to A over C squared plus B over C squared is equal to 1. What is A over C? Well, we're going to name the A. What is the A side called? Opposite. Good. So it's equal to opposite. And this one's going to be adjacent. And this one's hypotenuse, right? So what that says, well, that's equal to opposite over what? Hypotenuse square plus adjacent over hypotenuse squared, that's equal to 1. And what's opposite over hypotenuse? Sine squared theta. That's it. You just prove one of the trigonometry identity. Now, for us, a notation on the side. Okay, so notation-wise, please note this: sine squared theta is equal to sine theta parentheses squared. That's something that you need to know notation-wise. But this is not equivalent to this. Sine theta squared does not represent this. This one's not. Not equal to sine theta squared. They are different. One is theta squared. One is sine theta parentheses squared. So they are a little bit different. Are we okay? For us, notation-wise, if I write sine theta squared, I can write the sine square of theta. This is very crucial later on when we deal with trigonometry derivative, especially chain rule. Okay, so you have to understand, sine square theta is equal to sine theta squared. Okay, so this is all the Pythagorean identity. Now, there are 3 Pythagorean identity. I don't know if I spelled it right, but I don't really care. So sine square of theta plus cosine square of theta equal to 1. I want you to memorize this one. Okay, memorize. Or you can prove. You don't have to prove to me on the test. You just have to memorize those because it's very helpful. Also understand that I can move the sine square to the other side. That's equal to cosine square theta equal to 1 minus sine square theta. Okay, do you know that? I can move to the other side, I can move cosine square theta, that's still going to be equivalent. So now we're going to go into detail. There are 3 Pythagorean identity. I need you to prove the other 2. I need you to prove. Because the reason why I want you to prove it, so that way you forget on the test that you're not going to forget. Yes? You had a question? Somebody had a question over there. You raise your hand? No? Okay. So now I'm going to take this function. I'm dividing by, I'm going to show you the proof. So sine square theta plus cosine square theta is equal to 1. I'm going to divide the whole equation by sine square theta. If I do that, and with whatever we know before, so that's going to be sine over sine is what? 1 plus cosine over sine? Cotangent square theta. Make sure you write down square right here. That represents cosine theta parentheses square. 1 over sine is equal to what? Cosecant. Don't forget about the square because I take points off before. So that becomes the We're going to call this one as Pythagorean theorem A. So this is A, I want you to remember it. B is I want you to prove it. So how do you get the other one? What do you think? You're going to follow the same thing. You're going to divide it by what? Cosine squared theta, right? So I'm going to take this function again. I'm going to divide by everything by cosine squared theta. That's equal to tangent squared theta plus 1 equal to secant squared theta. You're going to see this relationship a lot in derivative too. Cotangent and cosecant, they come into always like, you know, that's going to come into one to the other one. It's very interesting. So that was the second one. So we're going to call that equation C for Pythagorean identity. Am I going too fast? So we just proved 3 different ones, right? Pythagorean, coming from nothing. You have to be able to prove on Wednesday, not only memorizing. Because memorizing doesn't mean anything to me. I want you to be able to teach your grandchildren about how the Pythagorean theorem comes to play. And I'm not joking with you, I'm actually serious. 40 years later, I'm going to be like, hey, did you teach your grandchildren about this? I'm not joking with you. If you don't, now physically show up to your door. I'll teach you again. So you can teach your grandchildren. Okay, so A, B, C. So we know those 3. What else we need to know? Sum and difference formula. Now this one you had to memorize. Sum and difference formula, you're going to remember 2 things. One is SMS and CSO. Okay, those are 2 acronyms you need to remember. Now, this one's no way to prove it. There's no way to prove it for you. But there is a way to memorize it. So we're going to write down what SMS stands for. S stands for sign. M stands for mixed group. Devin, you didn't write anything down, so you got it? Okay. Same is the same sign. C means cosine. Same group. And opposite sign. Questions? SMS, CSO. That's how do you remember? So I'm going to start with sign. Sign of A plus B. Now, you don't need to know this for AP Calc because rarely tested. But still, I want you to know a little bit more than what you know for AP Calc. Because AP Calc is only, it's a fraction of stuff, you know. Some people are going to say, oh yeah, that's easy, just distribute. Sine A plus sine B. And that means you don't know pre-calc at all. Because you cannot distribute the sine function into A plus B. It actually has a formula. The proof of that is very difficult, but just memorize that this. So it's sine of A plus B is going to be mixed group, which is sine of A cosine of B. And the cosine of A sine of B. So do you see that I mix everything together? Sine A, B, cosine, so sine A, cosine B, and I flip everything together. So it'll be cosine A, sine B. I flip everything completely. And then I'm going to follow the same sign as this, so it's plus. So this equal to this. Should start coming back to you. In your pre-calc or Mr. Nguyen's class or Mr. P's class, they probably ask you what is sine of 30 degree plus 45 degrees. So it's sine of 75 degrees. It's also on your final exam. If you remember, it says sine of 75 degrees, which one of our own choice is the sine of 75 degrees. So you have to do sine of 30 degrees and sine of 45 degrees, and then you're gonna plug in all of them, and you work out fractions, something over 4, something like that. It's like square root of 6 minus square root of 2 over 4, something like that. Okay, so same thing on the other one. A minus B is equal to sine A cosine B minus what? Cosine of A cosine of B, sine of B. So we just do the same sign, right? Mixed group, boom, boom. It's easy to remember. CSO and SMS. You can think about co-acronym for SMS or CSO. So now what's a cosine? A plus B is equal to, cosine stands for same group. Which group do you start? Well, you start with cosine, right? So you should start with cosine. So cosine A, cosine B, sine A, and sine B. And this one is start with a plus, there's no opposite sign, so it's minus. Next one, cosine of A minus B. Can you tell me what the equation now? Can you tell me the equation? Cosine A, cosine B, and that's a sine A and sine B. What are the signs here? Plus. We finish all the sum and difference formulas. We just memorize all the sum and difference formula, Pythagorean identity. What's the next thing you have to know? Well, we still have one more board. Huh? Double angle. So this one I usually ask you to memorize. Sine 2 theta equal to 2 sine theta cosine theta. That was an easy memorization. A lot of problem based on that. Some people says, hey, Mr. A, I challenge you to prove it. Okay, it's not hard. It's very direct. Well, 2 theta means what? Theta plus theta, x plus x, right? So can I place this x plus x like this? Right? And can I use sum and difference formula? Can I use the sum and difference with this SMS, right? Sine, cosine, cosine, sine, right? And it's a plus sign, right? So can I change that? It's just theta and theta. There's no mixed term, so it's okay. So it's an associate property. This one, 2 times 3 is same thing as 3 times 2. Boom. And then can those two add together? 2 sine theta, cosine theta. We just proved the double angle identity using sum and difference formulas. Let me know if I'm going too fast. So if you say, I don't want to memorize this, that's fine. You just have to memorize this. I'm okay if you memorize this. I'm also okay if you memorize this. But the other two, actually, I want you to prove. So this one, those two, I want you to prove it. But I can prove this one too. Cosine of 2 theta, cosine of 2 angle adding each other is equal to cosine squared theta minus sine squared theta. It looks like Pythagorean identity, but it's not. It's reverse, every sign's change. Right? Then you say, okay, well, can I use a sum and difference to prove it? Do you want me to slow down? Natasha, you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So cosine of theta plus theta. What is theta plus theta? Well, cosine means what? S stands for same group. Cosine theta, sine theta, sine theta. Opposite sign, minus, is equal to cosine squared theta minus sine squared theta. Got it? Oh yeah, this is a cake. I got this. I just had to memorize sum and difference formula. Sum and difference formula is SMSCSO, and I can find out double equidentity. But there's more, right? So this one is something I don't want you to memorize. I actually want you to do proof. So this one, I want to see this. Okay. How does it work? So cosine 2 theta is equal to 1 minus 2 sine squared theta. You know this, and you know this. You can memorize it, but I don't want you to memorize it. I want you to prove it. Proof is easy. You know cosine 2 theta equal to this, right? Do you know this? Julia? Okay, so can I substitute cosine theta, cosine squared theta equal to something else? Well, I can. Because you see here, the A here, that represents what? Cosine squared theta is equal to 1 minus sine squared theta, or sine squared theta is equal to 1 minus cosine squared theta. Do you see that? I just move it to the other side. So here is the things I'm substitute with. Cosine squared theta is equal to 1 minus sine squared theta. And then this part is equal to cosine. So this one minus sine squared is equal to 1 minus 2 sine squared theta. You do the same thing for the sine squared theta. I'm going to replace that as 1 minus cosine squared theta. And that's going to distribute. The sign's going to change, becomes adding. So cosine squared theta times cosine squared theta is going to be 2 cosine squared theta minus 1. So that becomes the second one. I want you to be able to prove that one. Proof is probably one of the most important thing in math. We don't teach it anymore because students hear proof, they run away. It's from geometry, right? So proof triangle is congruent to this triangle. You're like, no, my life's the end. No, your life's not going to end. If you understand. Devin, wait, you look at your computer.
I forgot my glasses.
Then you say, how many of you guys are HL math? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, good. So now 8 of you guys need to know 2 more formulas. I'm still going to test you in my class. If you know your 8 more formula, it's good. So there is something called power reducing formulas right here. Power reducing. First of all, understand what I meant. Power reducing. It's reducing a power. So it's any way I can graph a function, sine squared of x, equal to the first degree function. Sine squared is a second degree, right? Because squared. So it's any other type of function you can represent it in the first degrees. Okay, we're going to show you after I did this. So here's this. So, but you should see a clue right here. The clue here is right here. Sine squared theta, this is a second degree function, right? Is equal to the first degree functions. So can I just solve for sine squared theta? If I do, then I get my power reducing. If I do, I'm getting power by power reducing formula. So I'm going to take this formula. Oh, also one advantage of this, right? Sorry, let me get back to double angle. One advantage of this is this. I can change strictly to sine squared. I can change strictly to cosine squared. I don't have a mixed term. So like this one has a bad thing. A lot of time when you're trying to prove one side is equal to the left hand side and right hand side, remember that? So you're trying to prove left side equal to right hand side. that this one is really hard to use because this one has two cosine square and the sine square at the same time. So you want to strictly just sine square, then you can convert to this one. If you want strictly cosine in terms of cosine, then you're going to use this one. Then you say, okay, so this is a power reducing formula. How do I use power reducing? I can use this formula as double angle identity. Can I solve for sine squared data? Yeah. So I'm gonna move it simultaneously, right? So this is gonna switch both at the same time. Switch. Because I'm gonna subtract this, adding this. So I'm gonna get this. And I'm divided by both sides, so I'm gonna get sine squared theta is equal to 1 minus cosine 2 theta over 2. So this function, sine squared theta, I can write in this form as well. Besides 1 minus cosine squared theta, I can write in the first degree functions. So instead of like this, the second degree functions, I can actually change to the first degree functions. And you can probably assume that cosine squared theta is going to be plus, which is you're right. So here it's going to be 1 minus 1 plus cosine of 2 theta. Same thing, I'm going to move in 1 over, and I'm going to divide it by 2. I'm going to get it, so that's power reducing formula. So this is for HL math. This is HL math, or Calc 2. And this is Calc 2. But I'm going to test you too. You just know all the formula you need to know for trigonometry. Woohoo! Crash course. Now unit circle. You have to know your unit circles. If you don't know your unit circle, you're pretty much gonna be at the disadvantage. Now luckily, the new AP exam has not too much of trigonometry. But that doesn't mean we're not gonna prepare them. We're gonna over-prepare rather than under-prepare. You are not gonna do well just without trigonometry. You have to understand trigonometry. We're gonna talk about trigonometry. How many of you guys remember unit circles? Raise your hand. By heart? Applying?
Yeah.
So if I were to ask you what is cosine of 7 pi over 6, you can tell me the answer. Cosine of 7 pi over 6. Raise your hand if you think you know the answer. Cosine of 7 pi over 6. I know those three, they are my students, so I know. Moniac, I know. Hopefully Evelise know, because it's a disgrace.
I am a disgrace.
Cosine of 7 pi over 6. I only have 4 of the students knows what's the answer. Question, you might know cosine of 7 pi over 6.
I had a really bad math teacher last year.
Well, you had me last year. Yeah. Oh no, 2 years ago. Oh, 2 years ago. Yeah, so he take recount 2 years ago. Who was your math teacher last year? Here's the example. A in that class doesn't even represent to my F.
It was nothing.
You do nothing.
He just sits there.
Did you have A?
Yeah, but you just sit there.
Did you learn anything?
No.
Yeah. So
And I
grade
tried, but-
does not equivalent to knowledge, right? This is a really easy proof. Grade does not equal to knowledge whatsoever.
I tried, but he just didn't.
And physics is a fun class too. It's supposed to be fun.
I'm taking physics.
Well, this teacher is too bland.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I know.
It's like a piece of paper.
I fell asleep in his class today. I couldn't stay up all night.
No offense to him, but he looks like a nice guy. We go to same school. We go to same school, and he graduated. We had the same professor. He was a biochemistry major. I'm a chemistry major. The guy was just looked like he's plant. He doesn't have no personality. It's kind of boring.
Have you heard him talk?
No.
It's extremely boring too.
Honestly, just him saying,
Yeah, no, I fell asleep in this class just from his voice.
Okay, so here from now on, it's gonna do. You're gonna use that here to do my homework.
I already did.
That's what everybody did for trip, right? Last year, everybody in trip's class doing my homework. Like Christian.
You can do whatever you want in this class.
Monsieur.
All we did was talk and do whatever for homework.
He called me once, he didn't say a word.
Huh?
He called me, he didn't say a word. Oh, that doesn't look like this is.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody isn't up here, so I was like, I'm always glad I have a student taking recap because like that's like guarantee your homework there. Either you can copy homework there, or you can like do your homework over there. So grade is not equivalent to knowledge. That's one thing you're gonna have to learn. Okay, so what happened here? Here is to understand all the formulas connect with each other. We're gonna ask you to, I'm gonna have a sheet, and the sheet's gonna look like this. I'm gonna print out in a second. I should have printed out a long time ago. I'm gonna print out now. So what happened is you should know all your formulas. So you're gonna have to know everything in that. You're gonna make an index card that's gonna help you. So what? Unit circles. You should know your unit circle, but the way I teach it is going to teach from geometry all the way to trigonometry. So the way about teaching geometry is this. So you should start with geometry like this. And this is a SAT questions. Geometry question is like this. So SAT, two ratio you need to know for geometry. What are those two ratios? Anybody? Two special triangles.
5, 12, 13.
What?
That's not a ratio, though.
30, 36. Oh, no.
It's 45,
That can't be a
45,
ratio.
45, 90.
I'm not looking for that.
30. Are you sure it's not 36 in there? 45? Yeah, it's 45, 45, 90, and 36. Oh, 90, 69.
So this is the x, this is the x, this is what?
Yeah.
That's square root 2.
X times square root 2. Thank you. If you know this on SAT, it's going to help you. It's going to save you so much time. Why? The SAT question might be something like this. They say, hey, I seen this question here. I don't remember what was it. They say, this is a SAT question. They say this is a square. And they say this one's 10 square root 2. And they say, what is the area of the square? There it is, SAT question right here. They say, what's the area of the square? It's 100. Because 10 square root 2 is 10 square root 2, right? So that means must be this is 10, this is 10, right? 100, done. SAT question, so easy. You should learn this in geometry, but nobody people don't remember it. So we're gonna, there's two examples on 45, 45. So if I have this side is 7, this side is 7. What's the third side? 7 square root 2. That's easy, right? So now what if you have this? If this side is 10, what is this side? So you're going to take this side equal to this ratio. Right? X is equal to 10 over square root 2. You're going to rationalize this. Remember that? Are we okay here? This is a Geometry 101. This is the SAT questions.
go again.
That was
You go again.
I know.
The world is about to end. Okay, we're gonna finish the trigonometry. You just circle tomorrow. Oh, you wanna know your score? Emilio, you gonna run away without knowing your score?
You told me my score already, remember?
79.
Okay, so where's my computer? Okay, you wanna know your score?
She grew up with
I like myself better than
this
this.
one was around.
No, I like you better than this. Oh, by the way, if you want to drop out this class, if you score about 40, I'm already contacting Mir because you cannot drop this class. Okay, if you want to test score back, I can give it to you also. You didn't really well, right? I like everything listeners. So it shows you that you guys are strong master. But without knowing it, pressure, dealing with pressure. 48%.
Oh yeah, probably not.
Yeah. It's kind of No. What'd you get? You got a whole way. That copy, man. I like your sister better.
I mean, you're gonna come to dress code. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's about 4 fingers right there.
Hi, you run away from
Yes, I
me.
did.
Okay, I thought
Sports world.
Okay. I'm not gonna change. You can stay after school, but skip for lunch. Oh, is somebody using?
Yeah, but she's waiting for me.
Oh, okay, so you have to go soon?
I have to take a plane soon.
So you decide to leave for sure?
Yes.
For sure, for sure. Okay.
Because I was like, I'm not taking
Okay, if that's the case, then I can see okay. I'm happy for you. Happy for you.
Thank you.
Please do. Okay, what's your name?
What? I was thinking an idea. Like I'm gonna write because I wrote about it and I was like, I can't really write much about this. So I'm gonna restart my essay at home.
Like, come
Maybe I'll ask if I-
You know it. Like, can you just?
This is only like.
Dude, he critiques my first sentence. You do not know that.
Oh, this is on live. That means I get to be in the video.
It's not like a.
Hygienist.
I taught this class.
I mean, hygienist.
So you have to. Yes, then go away.
Why?
2 years.
I'm not a.
You know you hate girls.
I'm no. If I hated you, I wouldn't be here.
You always hated me.
No, I
You
didn't.
say shit about me all the time.
This is on live, Mr. Ye. Look, see, even the people know. All zero. All 0 of them know.
Okay, what's next?
Me.
Monica's next. We're bringing you here, right?
Huh? Monica, I need to see Monica. Where's Monica? Huh? Huh?
She texted me about it. I'm like, you should do it.
Well, she was scared of me. I'm gonna my grade.
No, get her what here.
Alright.
Because I'm
Yeah,
not
let
sure
her bite down
schedule
a little.
regarding this.
Yeah, I told her to, but she's like scared that she's gonna fail. I'm like, dude, don't be scared to fail because it's gay.
Look, she's already better than half the kids here.
I know, that's what I told her. But you know, she's the same. She's her.
What's up? Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, what's that mean how to do number 5?
Foul?
Yeah, I have no idea what it looks like.
Are you H on math?
Yeah.
Are you H on math?
Yeah.
Because it says like its ends are in the shape of an isosceles triangle. Like, which part is the end? I don't know what the graph looks like.
Foul?
Whatever that is.
It's like economics.
Yeah. Oh.
It's
So
like a
maybe
triangle.
it's like this was a triangle that goes forward.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go find
Amber.
See, I'll be right back.
I'm gonna leave.
The past is-
I got it.
I'm gonna got it.
That's the volume.
Okay, so those people I need to get your score back.
That's just some perfect square.
Yes, yes.
Dude, I
Number 5.
I didn't get anything in chemistry.
That's it.
Yes.
People are just so annoying.
You guys are taking
like
chem.
Hey, bro.
You guys are taking chem.
Yeah.
That's a student, but not bad.
What's that? How do you draw?
What are you doing?
What?
You gotta draw.
Okay, so you want your test back?
Oh, we're good for
Sports science
you.
and bio.
Test back, test back, test back.
Yeah, you don't
No,
know.
no, I.
I want to know.
So,
Next year, I want my math.
Okay,
Because next year I might take the IT class, or I might do good in this class, I might take it.
If you take SL sports science, you take sports science, right? If you take sports science, it's a 1 year class.
Yeah.
But you're still gonna be stuck with bio.
9063, 15th period.
You won't.
No.
It's too late.
9263.
So you're in this tomorrow?
If you really
Yeah.
complain.
9576.
What would I switch to?
Oh,
It's not you,
I'm
right?
doing that.
Oh, you're doing that?
Yeah, no, no, I'm actually doing it next year.
Oh, you're just doing it this year.
Practice so like I can get my
No.
exam done this year. Not over right now.
No.
You could have had.
No. 3155?
I didn't say.
High five.
I think a lot of psych.
G766.
3155?
SL bio.
3155, yeah.
The only number that matters here is 2766.
7600? 1230? 1230?
After that, just, okay, this one, I feel like.
953.
It's hard. No,
Nothing.
it's like easier, but I think just take
Mosquito.
it, like just how you are. See how you do,
241892.
and then look at all the stuff it tells you to work on.
9346.
Write that out all this summer, and then you can get it. That's what I did.
8405.
For my math class.
2766
So you got this.
6804.
How do you know if it's not me or not?
3615.
You get that? Oh.
3855.
I was
Oh,
here.
I did all. We worked together.
7184.
Yes. We didn't get the definition. Yeah.
8132.
Because they're supposed to be in Spanish.
No.
Yeah.
1419.
I'm sick.
3425. Yes. Oh my God, your handwriting is disgusting.
That's how you know it's mine?
Ugly as a look.
Wow.
Oh, did you do
That's
partial
nice.
credit?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise, if everybody will fail like miserably.
Yeah, you didn't get this?
Huh?
You didn't get 7th period this?
Oh, I didn't, but that's okay, I'll print another one. Yeah, it's print out right there.
When are you gonna give me one?
Wait, which one
It's
though? I
just
don't
two
know.
of them.
He was supposed to be here.
There's 2 papers. There you go.
This is
that's-
going, oh.
But I didn't print the second one because we didn't go over the second one.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this is the one with the open today.
Okay, so hold on a second,
What's that?
3710.
Yeah, no, you didn't go over that.
Wait, Bobby, I didn't give you yours?
No, no,
This is the one. You probably called it, who was this?
You give the Weaver?
it's
A
2766.
lot of homework I have today.
5115?
Oh my god, Amber.
No.
Do you want one? Bless you, that was actually so cute.
You do this wrong. You do this wrong.
Julia Klinsky? Julia? 0902?
I had to work on my notes first, like.
You're not
Northern?
there too?
For TOK, I had my essay, I have to put it out like.
Thank God.
This is just.
Right, it's all about it.
2696?
Practice one.
Practice.
Then
I'm gonna see
then
if you
the
do it.
last.
6085?
Spanish, yeah.
6720? 3660? Rihanna?
Oh, yes.
Not bad.
Okay.
8010?
So, I'm gonna do.
5196?
Tell me to do your thing.
9744 5199 5199? Who's it? 5199? 7945 9905 8491 0625. Okay, so fifth period, somebody. Who are you? Okay, give me a second. You need to work on your algebra skill if you want to be successful in this class. So, your algebra skills suck. No offense.
I mean, I can pull up the
What class do you have? Oh.
You call the cheerleaders?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, Bobby, come find your stuff.
Alright.
This is the key.
Julia.
I
Classes.
went to go get my bag.
Alright.
I'm gonna have three. Yeah, the thing, we have to send it in the car over because we late. But then they want to
This is a calc test that they have for algebra tests. You need to find out how to do all of them.
Yeah, he's actually.
Right now, or?
So like the line part?
Now, later, or whatever.
Because I have another.
Mr. Yeah, I wrote my name on this. I got 0 on this? Understandable. Plus 5. I got that
Or
right.
does it just start at 6?
You know this kid named King?
No, James game? Yeah.
Really good?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Like, do you want me to like ask him?
Mr. Yeah, did I get infinity points? You were just supposed to close that off. Alright.
Oh, may I? Can I get my
Oh, I see my. You put your name. For me, because I knew this would happen. I was thinking ahead. May I? You put your name
Mr. Yeah, watch. I'm gonna be the most improved student you've ever had.
Why is yours a
Yeah, I'm gonna be the most improved student you've ever had in your life. Like, I'm gonna take this, turn it to 8.
Yeah, there's one time like somebody got rejected. I was like, that's the best thing to happen. Is your personal
Mr. Yeah, this is how I feel myself. I look at this and I don't like being on the bottom. I like being at the top, Mr. Yeah, and that's where I belong. On the beat.
I've been up in my other side. So here you are both of you in the goal direction. So what do you want to do in the future?
I think Connor is.
Oh, I got a 7.
Can I just compare it to mine?
Hey, sorry. What? I have a key here if you want to do the key.
Oh.
I'm not too concerned about it.
Oh, this is
Can you give us a call? So I want to see your algebra skills. Okay, well, let's go see. Who do you have as your teacher? I mean,
Oh, wait.
okay. Don't say your teacher, but just, I want to see his algebra skills.
Spanish don't break.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait, what can I take off? If you had third, man, I wish we had third, man, that would be great. But we may have it next week, no? Yeah, what?
I get already got it, but I don't have to go.
Okay.
I got so right now, 26 is not operating.
Got you, alright.
Now,
You get it now?
situation, so if you're below 20, I got you.
I'm gonna have to keep that in the back of my head. Just for future reference, agreed.
But,
But no, man, we have to do a lot more together. I feel like last year. Yeah, exactly. Great stuff.
It's a lot.
you know, what's your option? They're supposed to have more time.
And that would have taken my time. Yeah, my time was that like, I probably would have taken me out of break out to maybe this class. Take him out. He wouldn't have.
So,
It's just the third as the points. Yeah. Oh. That's why I said. Oh, that was confusing. I thought you were crying. No, oh my god, no. I'm sorry, Eric, I forgot. See, that's what I was trying to figure out. Because I couldn't remember. Okay. I didn't know if I would should I multiply this thing?
My recommendation is
That's like where my
really depends on what you want to do. Don't worry about
it's gonna be like an order.
Yeah,
what's
that's
your
what
dream job.
I stared at this one. Yeah, I didn't try to describe which one is just where square versus square multiplier that I will
But do you have
So I should have did that. No, wait, no, this goes right here.
do you get that?
I just,
Okay.
so bad.
So you have A, that means you must have worked pretty decent hard
Oh, I
last
didn't
year.
even see that part.
Or what happened this year, beginning of the year, when I see it, it's two homeworks. Yeah, but there's a lot of questions. So, if you get an A, it is still way about, yes.
Yeah.
So that 26 maybe have some bonus to it,
Or actually,
but,
it is.
I looked at your pre-calc, I don't.
When I did 27 times 3.
Okay, your score, so I don't wanna get a.
Yeah.
So that means like the cube root
Okay,
is gonna
pre-calc, I
be,
understand.
okay, 27 cubed, a cube root is 3. But you have to multiply 27 times 3 to get 81. So the 3 is inside and the 3 is outside. But the root is outside is the one that was root. Yeah. Yeah. Don't explain this like go 3 to 1.
That would be a lie.
So,
Because they actually get it.
so here's the.
Or we could do the unit circle problem.
The unit circle one, I
I know that.
understand better.
Yeah, but just considering the fact that like
What is the
Yeah.
thing after
Yeah.
that?
So I was gonna count it that as one is two, like you have to do.
That's a chance.
Well, let me just give you
So that you have to code it.
this one. Because this is over.
Well,
Yeah, what does that mean? That's like to learn, right?
What, you had a long day or?
But it's not. Just.
Girl, this isn't even 8, even if you were to multiply it in, it's 6.
No, this is 8.
Just.
That's where that came from.
No.
Whoa. Okay, negative 3
So,
times 2,
how
negative
often
6
do you
minus
practice?
2. Oh, okay.
Are you in theater or?
Yeah, that's okay. Because I was like, I didn't. Don't.
How hard? You want to work hard.
This is where I decided, I'm like, no,
If you don't want to work hard.
I'm such a good guy. Because I made this positive 60 and then
Yeah, but negatives, oh yeah,
because I most of them did
That's six.
Okay, so the smallest one.
I know how to do it. I know how to do it. You need to explain.
Yes, that part. One more, right?
I still got this.
I remember basically teaching it. And when he was going over it, I was like this.
I remember, that's like the only day we got.
It says here it came down to you.
Yeah, I did the line test.
I did it.
There,
I got the
yeah.
How
was Kate?
No,
No,
Kate's
good.
Would you?
What is this?
They're all wearing a jacket. Burning.
Well, explain this for me.
Dude, I didn't get it.
What the hell did you do? What did I do? Okay, I can see.
I'm off there, carry the bag.
You gotta be a president, This is a presidential mistake. That's what we call it. Yeah, like all of these here are presidential mistakes.
Hey, don't worry, once you turn president, you can fix that. You should look at task and be like, I found it. I just spelled this out wrong. It's what you just said, I'm gonna talk wrong.
Let me see if it's right though.
How's that? How's that? Feel that.
See, never, whenever you see a question, never divide by x because you're gonna close solution. Just know that. Never ever divide by x because it's just lost your solution. This equation will have
No, it's plus one. That's pretty easy problem.
If you divide by x,
It's
so
plus five.
it's
It's
problem.
plus one.
Damn.
I got plus one. Yeah, but I got more. Oh, it's plus five.
Let's say this is right. You know, you
Plus negative x is equal to negative 12.
don't have to do test
It's
right.
plus or minus 9.
Yeah, I'm doing this for my own.
See what I mean? Plus or minus 9.
You know, if you do this.
Like I'm.
When you do it, because you're still. Oh yeah.
I'm
I'm not gonna lie.
Are you kidding?
I'm in SGA's most improved student. Oh yeah, I don't think I have your I need two. I need your snap. Alright, let's just do all.
Give me your
three.
social security number like that.
Yeah, you know what? While we're at this, give me your bank.
It's illegal. Don't mess around. You like us in trouble.
Yeah. Don't be like, hola, ¿cómo está?
I'll go over there.
Snapchat.
This will be easier going over there. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
so
that, I feel like I just need
I'll
to,
make sure
like,
you're on the.
sit down.
Sign is 1 over.
Yeah, okay, but I wanna come over my home. That's what I was
It
saying.
was my Nickelodeon account way back when.
They'll pay for it.
Anything like body
No,
No, I just never changed it. It was like random usernames. I was like, alright, I'm just random. They saw that one photo with you flexing with your arm.
But I don't like that. It's just a little, you know the units.
Literally on my Instagram
Do you think
story.
we can?
I have to. I see that.
I know you're gonna use
A
it.
whiteboard?
I'm like,
That's
damn,
called
you
my
got that
brain,
arm.
like,
Like, you got some good.
I don't need to, bro.
Wait, why is there two lines? What's the degree and what is this?
It's literally on like, you know the stories that you put on your like.
Oh, really? That's gonna be pi over 2.
Yeah.
And then it goes pi over 6, pi over 1, and then pi over
You already have a rough idea.
And then it's like, and then it's back pi
Oh,
pi
yeah.
over 3. This is the way I remember. I remember like 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. No, because like over here, because it's square root of 2. Whoa, I did not have this 2. Square root of 2 over 2.
Let me
It's
see.
1. You know, I do it because I'm like, okay, I have an actual. A 6 is big,
Because
smaller
he's
than
saying
a
it.
Hey, what did you do? This one you could just
That just confused me. Well, you know what?
The back was pretty easy, right?
So I don't like that.
For X, this one I did inequality.
Oh, I thought they were lunch boxes.
X is
You can't tell me they don't look like lunch boxes.
I did
They hooked up with them, and I actually was like, that's cute. I was like,
I mean, I think in a perfect score, because
when did they finish
Should I
it?
pick a line or?
Oh, they-
Well, I got the photos on me. Hold up, Raphael, you have, so you saw my phone?
Well, not all of it, I can do it.
Because they came up with
Oh, okay.
I
I was
was
like,
like, I
like,
like told him
the
the
pi
pi out
and
all
all
the
the
about my
degrees.
And he was like, what do you mean? It's even more difficult.
hold up, you have the
But then
time.
how did you do the math or do you just, that's better than half the
No,
people
I
that
can
do
do
it.
it in my head.
Alright,
What
well,
math is
do you
it?
know? What do you mean? Wait, what?
It's
Don't worry about it. Yeah, there is math, this is
240, sorry.
Whoa. I say, I was like, I'm severely late. This.
No, they can't, I remember.
This is negative 1, 0.
Wait, are there extra papers with them?
See, I remember
I
it.
do not know, you can ask him.
Already added them.
Do you have any of the units?
I don't know it.
So you get my contact?
You didn't know all this,
I
right?
got to give up.
Why? What is all yours? Like memorize it, but there's like actual.
I still remember.
Oh, yeah, I know the actual thing.
3, 2, 1, 1.
You just memorized it?
Oh, okay.
Please don't remember that 3, 2, 1 crap.
That's the way you're gonna see, guys, learn them well. This is annoying way.
Oh, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, Mr. P.
Okay, I know that.
I just can't remember because like the angles, so.
It's not memorized. I'm gonna go over the whole test here. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah, can.
Can you please? Can you use like questions and stuff though?
Huh?
Questions?
Yeah, do you have like another worksheet that you can like post on it?
Okay, so this is. Wait.
So let me tell you how many points this worth. This worth about 100 points on your SAT. Literally 100 points. There were a lot of questions that very similar, like number 12 for sure show. Number 12, solving literal equation. Number 2 for sure.
2 for sure.
Yeah, that's.
Hey,
so
yeah,
funny.
number 2 is
Question
easy.
that
Number 2 is easy.
Plus minus, another idea of
Yeah, I
plus
got
minus.
one.
The one with absolute value, I didn't put on the test, but it's out here.
Easy one I screwed it
This
up.
first
I
page.
missed this one.
This first page.
I don't know how to do number 3.
Composite function for sure, okay?
Well, you did this.
Line equations for sure, perpendicular lines.
You just you messed with the slope.
Inverse function for sure. So literally, I can name 10 questions that's for sure that's on this test. Now, on the review sheet, it's gonna work more. So a lot of you guys don't wanna work as hard, which is frustrating. Okay, so we're gonna talk about all the questions, and hopefully I can record it.